been quite the journey through our buyer-initiated program, our developments, all of those things. But today we're going to focus on how we work with homeowner-assisted or existing homeowners. So before we get started, I just want to really quickly, super quickly, go around the room. Just first name and a letter from your first name that describes how you're feeling right now. And this is not moving forward.
Do we have to name the feeling?
Yes, you have to name the feeling. And there's no judgment. Oh, it has to be right there. Okay, sorry. I was going to try to do this. I'm going to just turn this a little bit so I can see it. All right, let's start in the back. Who wants to go first? First name and a letter that, from your first name that just, and a feeling, an adjective.
I'm Babur, and I'm bold.
Bold?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Just keep shouting them out.
Oh man, I'm Mary and I'm blanking on words. I'm feeling whatever synonym means curious and starts with one of the letters in my name.
I have no idea, so let's move on. But Mary, welcome.
Afton and I'm anxious.
Okay. Keep going.
Ashley and appreciative.
Okay.
Sherry, smiley, I don't know. Got a feeling of it.
And I'm pretty cold.
Okay, nobody else can use that. We're working on the temperature. Appreciate that. Keep
So
going.
I'm Brenda. I guess mine's going to be two words. I was going to say blown away.
Okay.
I'm Jessa and I feel awake.
Oh, awesome. Especially at 3 in the afternoon.
I'm Sherry with a C and it's confused.
I'm Emily and I'm ecstatic.
Ooh. Maybe just keep going around.
Getty, motivated, learn. Janelle, I'd say enthused. Using my name. Enthused.
Enthused. I was going to say, there's not a
I
C.
take a joke.
Chad, absorbent.
All right, so here's where the challenge starts coming. People start.
I'm Diane and I can't think of something. So.
Inquisitive?
Doors, and I rested. I cleared my emails. How do you say hi?
I'm Susan, and I'm animated.
I'm Chuck, and I'm curious.
All right.
Michelle, excited.
Jake, and I'm educationable.
I don't think that's a word. This is my colleague, so this group right here, if you see.
I'll shorten it, educatable.
Educatable. I don't know that that's a word either. Educatable. You know, it's never cool to challenge the presenter on how to spell something right out of it. Okay, what else?
Mariah, and I can't think of it.
It's okay.
I probably would have said anxious.
Okay, we'll just do, there we go. Anxious to learn or anxious just about overwhelmingly?
Both, actually, so it could be good and bad. Anxious about how much we have to do, but also anxious to learn.
Julie, I'm jolly.
Salutations.
My name is E-Jazz, and I'm...
Introduce your, or you referred, I'm sorry, were you just greetings and salutations when we met before? I'm sorry, okay.
No, this is how I say hi. But my name is E-Jazz, and I am etheric.
I'm sorry,
Etheric.
a Derek?
Etheric.
Oh, okay. Hopefully I spelled that right. Is that E-D-E-R-I-C-K?
Oh, E-T-H-E-R-I-C.
E-T-H-E-R-I-C? Okay, thank you. All right.
Brooke and
Okay. I hope you stay that way for the next hour and a half.
I'll say Alvin voracious.
Voracious. C-I-O-U-S.
Yeah.
As long as it's phonetic.
Chad, courageous.
Okay.
Trenton, ready.
All right. Did I miss anybody?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Shang and
Shang and I'm stoked.
Char? A letter, your name and a letter from your first name that describes you today, right now.
I don't really have a word to describe my mood right now, but.
Charismatic?
So Char is,
Charismatic.
what is it?
Charismatic.
Charismatic?
That'll work, Shane.
Okay, note to self, make sure you study the dictionary before you leave. Wow. Okay. All right, so we got all sorts of feelings, emotions. At the end of the day, I am just thankful that you're all here, and we're going to spend the next, 60, 70 minutes together talking about homeowner-assisted programs. And so our goals today are really to, so the intentions for this afternoon are to give you an overview of some of the homeowner-assisted programs that are out there, not just what necessarily our organization is doing, but things that we do have direct experience with, just so that we're able to talk about it somewhat intelligently. The different opportunities, some of the challenges that come with those opportunities, some really critical lessons that we've learned working with existing homeowners and how to help them become part of the land trust, as well as spending the last 10 or 15 minutes in a group discussion, wanting to get a sense of what you're seeing in your own communities and what opportunities you think might be able to be cultivated as we have the conversation this afternoon. And then just making sure that everybody's questions, as best possible, are offered. So the three main things that we're going to look at today are assisting existing homeowners. Am I anyway? Okay. Existing homeowners that are facing tax forfeiture, maybe mortgage foreclosure, or may need to refinance in order to retain their home. The Freddie Mac, if you're not aware of this, Freddie Mac has a pilot undergoing right now in 4 cities that is a shared equity conversion, and I'm going to share some more details with you about that. And then the last one is what we call a seller leverage program, and we'll go into details about that as well. So the very first one, and some of you may have, in the course of the next couple days, may hear us, meaning those of us from the CLT, talk about Project Sustain Legacy. What that really is a program that is focused on helping existing homeowners who are facing tax forfeiture, potentially mortgage foreclosure, or are in need of refinancing in order to retain ownership of their home. What is most interesting about individuals and households that are in this situation is that they are often our longtime homeowners in our communities. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. They're often elderly or on fixed incomes. And so as we've seen property taxes increase, we've seen just different scenarios happen. Most of the time there's been a significant life occurrence. There has been a divorce, there has been a death, there has been an illness that has really just hit them in a catastrophic financial way. And so they find themselves not having been able to pay their property taxes for 2 or 3 years. They may still have a small mortgage on the house, or they've taken out a second mortgage and it's headed to foreclosure. Or it's someone who is inheriting a home and they just weren't quite prepared, or they didn't know that there was back due taxes, or they didn't know that there was a mortgage that was headed to foreclosure. We've had some other situations where there was a divorce and the woman living in the home was not aware that her husband had refinanced into a negative amortization loan prior to them separating. And so she was faced with an ever-increasing interest rate. This was back prior to 2008. And was just really looking to potentially lose her home, which had been the home for her and her children since they had been here. So one of the things looking at it is, can we use the community land trust strategy in these situations? And that was a question that was posed to our organization about 12 years ago, is could you help retain the ownership of this particular home? And so what we've learned is that there is an opportunity to use this model. One of the things that we have to think about is really looking at what is the hardship that caused that life crisis. Is it something that's ongoing? Is it really just the chance that somebody needs an opportunity to kind of reset themselves? And I think we've all, in the journey of our own lives, have had periods of time where if I could just reset myself, I could begin to move forward and thrive. I know I've certainly been there at a couple of different times. My oldest brother, God bless him, one time told me, if you stop accepting jobs that are 50% of your previous salary, you might be able to pay for your rent. And I was like, okay, I don't need to ask you for help anymore because you don't believe in me. But that's aside, that's a whole nother session. But right, we've all had our journeys, and so it is really thinking and saying, we have this really powerful tool, we have this really powerful strategy that we can step in and help. The flip side of that is that the household has to be willing and interested to say, I do want this to become part of the land trust. Because any of these homeowner assisted programs, the home does become part of the land trust. It is subject to the same resale restrictions as a new home that's coming into the land trust. It is income qualifications still apply. So really just thinking about the things that we do in development or in helping through a buyer initiated program, some of the same principles apply in the homeowner assisted programs. So one of the things with the tax forfeiture and the mortgage foreclosure is there's usually debt, obviously, and property issues. In our particular case, what we looked at was, is the tax amount that is delinquent within what we would normally invest in a property? And we used our buyer-initiated guidelines to determine what that affordability investment was. So at the time, it's about $60,000 is our average for the buyer-initiated program. So when we are approached in a situation where someone says, can you help me keep my home? We're looking at how much debt is sitting out there, and the one lesson we learned is that what people think is out there is just the tip of the iceberg. The mortgage, the tax delinquency is just the beginning of what you'll begin to uncover. And so you have to be mindful of, okay, well, we know they owe $32,000 in taxes, but we are now also seeing that the utilities are behind. They have small credit card debt. They have some of these other things that are just stretching their resources. And so knowing that there's other issues with these scenarios, and also that there's often a lot of deferred maintenance on the properties. So also keeping in mind just exactly what you're getting into as an organization when you look at the homeowner assisted programs. So the goal of this particular scenario is being able to step in, using what you would normally view as affordability investment into the home, and using that same amount to pay off the tax delinquency or the small mortgage. The other scenario would be to say someone owes $100,000, but that's more than you are going to invest in affordability. But they are in a position to refinance, and by refinancing, you're going to strengthen their overall financial position. So you could come in with that same amount and say, well, we'll bring in $50,000, you can refinance to a $50,000 mortgage, it still becomes part of the land trust. We'll move forward with rehab and all of those pieces. So there's about 3 different scenarios that you can leverage this kind of thinking and model and strategy with existing homeowners. And so it just depends, and I know we're all from different parts of the world and the country, so you really need to understand what your forfeiture process is. And also a basic understanding of estates. If you leave with nothing else after this conference, please, if you own a property, have a will. Understand what you need to do to dispose of that property should you have to transfer that property, because it makes things much easier if you have something in place that is within the parameters. Otherwise, you really need to understand if there's family members, if there is a need to go through probate, all of those things, especially if it's an inherited home. So I share that because there's many layers to this. It's not something as simple as someone calling up and saying, I'm behind $10,000 on my taxes, can you help me keep my home? You need to understand the true situation. And as we share with individuals and families, we do need to get into your business. It's not because we want to know all your business, but we need to exactly understand what the situation is and how we can best help you. So when we step in, you step in with the affordability assistance. It satisfies whatever that housing-related debt issue is, and the homeowner agrees to have the home become part of the land trust. In our case, in Minneapolis and in Minnesota, it's quit claiming the land to us at what we call the closing, right? So very similar to what you would do with a new buyer. It's just bringing that homeowner to the table, paying off whatever needs to be paid off, quit claiming the land to the land trust. It now becomes part of the land trust. One of the other lessons we've learned is I encourage you not to consider doing this unless you also have the funds to do the rehab. Because it does not help to just pay off the debt sometimes when you have houses with no running water, which we've had that situation. The water was only coming in through the basement. The rest of the house, the copper had been stripped out of the house, and our homeowner was living like that for 4 years until we were able to assist. And so that's what I'm saying, like there are deep layers to this. You also have situations where there are gaping windows that are missing, and so people have $600–800 a month heating bills in the winter. If we don't fix that window, we're not truly helping to stabilize the household. And that really is the goal, is to stabilize the household while simultaneously creating a long-term affordable home. All of these, that's really what the whole goal of a homeowner assisted program is. How do we think differently about this strategy and this model, and not just assisting new homeowners into the land trust? And then all the rehab is completed post-purchase or post-conversion. So you're looking at, and I know some of this is kind of getting into the technical, but I think that's also part of our goal this afternoon. So part of this process is doing a walkthrough to see exactly the condition of the home prior to agreeing to it. Also doing due diligence to understand that the homeowner can still pay for taxes, insurance, and the lease fee post-conversion. And in our case, we require that the homeowner escrow with the organization. It's not, we'll just kind of, you can pay those, right? Because we want to see if we're going to start actually having another situation crop up. And we've done this particular thing with 13 households. And we do have some that are incredibly fixed income. This is some of our lowest households at 37% AMI is our average. And we do have some situations where we've had to cover some of the taxes and the insurance until people can kind of catch up. And now with some adjustments in the way our taxes are assessed in Minneapolis, we're starting to see that gap hopefully lessen a little bit. But when you have individuals and households on $700 or $800 a month, it's really tough to go to them and say, you need to pay $600 for us to help you stay in the home, right? So we try to balance that and work with our homeowners to keep them as much as possible, but not jeopardize the sustainability of the organization. So I think when we walked into this, you may see a homeowner who everything looks great on paper when you first help them. 10 years later, as taxes change, insurance changes, all of those things change, you just have to be prepared that they may not be in the same situation, or the bulk of their income can't necessarily go towards insurance, taxes, and ground lease. But as most of our ground leases have, if we do have an outstanding balance at time of sale or transfer, the land trust can recoup its cost at that point in time. But you have to be very real about what this costs in time and capacity. Questions on this one? I can get way more into the weeds, but.
When you're doing the rehab, are you bringing it to a point that's kind of comparable with what you would accept in the homebuyer initiated program, or are you anticipating upon the resale of that unit going in again and doing scale?
I think it's gonna be a mix, Chad. We haven't had any resales of these
Yeah,
homes. All of the 13 households, we are still in their homes, which is amazing. We do it to the best of our ability with what the budgets we have. And so would I say we're doing it to a level that we would do if it was a vacant rehab? No. But we are addressing lead where there is lead. We're addressing asbestos if there is. We're addressing plumbing codes, very similar to our buyer-initiated program framework, up to what we can afford to do. And that, on average, is about $55,000 to $60,000 that we put in a homeowner assisted in rehab. And the average we put in for affordability, I think, is around $40,000 or $50,000. In some cases, we've gone deeper than that just because we've had the funding to go deeper on the rehab. But it's just really a matter of where we sit and what funding we have at the time. But I would, on average, it's about $50,000. But that by no means does a complete rehab. We see a lot of plumbing issues, we see a lot of electrical issues, a lot of vermin, a lot of squirrels coming through that eat soffit and fascia, a lot of roofs. Those major repairs, right? Furnaces, hot water heaters, that if you're struggling to pay taxes or insurance or a small mortgage, you're not able to do a $5,000 furnace now or even a $2,500 water heater. So that's where you begin to see. I think there's only one household that we've had out of the 13 that's really had a very solid, stable house. Most of them could have used probably upwards of $90,000 to $100,000. But at least the core structure of the home and the mechanicals are stabilized. Other questions?
You talked about thinking about the CLT model differently, and in relation to the number of houses in the CLT, it's a smaller number.
Yes.
So to you personally, what do you see as the importance of this kind of approach?
Sorry, just welcome. The importance of this approach is, first and foremost, I would say majority of people who've come through the doors have said, even if you can't help me, I appreciate that you gave me some hope. Because they have gone pretty much through every resource that they've known to go to. Sorry. And they haven't had somebody willing to talk to them. And when I say you have to think about the land trust differently, is that sometimes we can get really entrenched in our lines of business, right? That we just do development. We just build houses, that's all we do. Or we just rehab houses and we sell them, or we just do a buyer-initiated program. I mean, that's where we were for 10 years. It was, we do the buyer-initiated program and we do developer partnerships. We don't do our own rehabs, we don't do our own construction. That changed over time, right? But I think sometimes as organizations, whether it be community land trust or others, it's like, this is what we do. I'm sorry, that doesn't fit into what we do. And so we can't really help you, and yet we have this powerful tool. If we can say we have this powerful tool, and we don't know how to help you in this situation, but we're at least willing to walk the journey with you for a portion of it and see if we can work, to me, that's the power of the community land trust and that strategy that we have for ownership. And the more flexible and adaptable you can be, you'll begin to realize the power behind this strategy. And not just for the organization. This is one of the few things, and I say this a lot, and people are like, oh, Stacy. But I think we do a lot of community work, and we spend a lot of money, we spend a lot of time keeping people comfortable in their current situations. And this is one of those strategies that I think individuals benefit, families benefit, the community benefits, and public funders benefit. And when you have something where all those parties can benefit, and begins to be more of a true solution to a situation we have in our community, then I think it's our responsibility to figure out how we leverage it as comprehensively and as deeply as we can. And as challenging as some of these situations are, because one of the things you'll hear me touch on is just the human relationship, is the fact that these are some of the most rewarding situations. When we have a long-term resident, 40 years, at risk of losing their home for $15,000 worth of property taxes, you're talking maybe a couple $100,000 in equity, over $15,000 in property taxes. And we can, yes, they may not get the full 100% of the equity on any change in market value in the futures. Ours is an appraisal-based formula, but they're not losing that $200,000. And in majority of cases, there is no debt on these homes except for a tax forfeiture. And so when you have an opportunity to step in, and the other part, I guess I didn't say on this, is that it's making sure people want to stay in the home. This isn't about, let me help you out, we're gonna do all this rehab, and you're gonna sell it as soon as the rehab is done. That is not the intent of a homeowner assisted program. The intent of the homeowner assisted program in this particular scenario is to help people retain ownership and connection to community. And that is usually, the most situations, is they want to stay in their community. And so that's where it does become very personal, because you get into such a level. And we are also often dealing with mental health issues and family issues and all of those things. And I've been asked in previous conversations, it's like, well, you're also kind of acting like a social service agency. And I think there's that real fine balance to walk, because it is about having key partnerships. And that's actually a great segue to this next one, is that some of the key partners, especially in the tax forfeiture and in the mortgage foreclosure, we could not be doing this if we didn't have a strong relationship with our county tax department. We actually have them call us when they have a homeowner who might need assistance. And that has come through years of working together. But the other thing that's been very interesting is after 3 or 4 of the homes where we did help homeowners, the county actually started, Hennepin County that is, here locally, did a pilot program for 6 months. They created a navigator position that is between the resident real estate services, or the property tax division, and the social services. Because what we also found was that there are often many social services that households are not tapping into that could help stabilize them in other areas that aren't housing related. They now have 6 navigators at Hennepin County and have a full department. And that became, because they've been able to stave off so many evictions and tax forfeitures by being able to step in more on the social service side sooner and getting those supports. The city also did something very similar and created a navigator position, but it was around special assessments, because in our city, the special assessments are added to the taxes. So somebody could be facing $30,000 in tax forfeiture, and $15,000 of that could be assessments because the tree didn't get cut down, they weren't able to repair their soffit and fascia. We had one who had a duplex, and then $10,000 of the taxes was just special assessments from the city. So the city is also trying to step in sooner and trying to give people resources to save off some of those special assessments. So the tax is a very important one, because that's a whole nother story on how it works in repurchasing from a tax forfeiture. Because one of the risks that the land trust takes in the state of Minnesota, or at least in Hennepin County, I shouldn't speak, I don't know about Ramsey and other counties, but in Hennepin County, the tax forfeiture, the title goes to the state. You have to pay off either the full amount or have a payment plan in place, and the deed comes back to the homeowner. It does not come back to the land trust just because we paid it off, so we have to have that agreement in place with the homeowner that they're going to close and move forward. We actually had a situation where a gentleman had, an angel investor had stepped in to pay off the tax forfeiture, thinking they were going to get title. And it went from a 5% interest on that payoff to a 25% interest by the time they had paid off. And bless our homeowner's heart, as soon as we found out title was back, the county is like, we've got the keys, what do we do? I'm like, we're not stepping in yet, so it's his house technically, and so he moved in, and it took us about a year, but we worked with the angel investor to actually step in and pay off what was owed to the angel investor, and it became part of the land trust. But I was like, bless your heart, because he's like, we're moving in. Which made it much trickier for the investor to have to kick them out of the house. I'm like, good luck, they're both now have traumatic brain injuries, and you had him sign the document after he had the brain injury, so I'm just gonna step back and let you guys handle it. We talk about public agencies to address non-housing needs. Homebuyer counseling agencies are very important, especially if we're doing mortgages or payoffs or mortgage refinances. So we've had a couple of situations where people have refinanced. I mentioned the one that had the negative amortization. The other one was actually a woman who wanted to retire and needed to just reduce her mortgage payment on a monthly basis. So she owed $60,000, she refinanced $30,000. But what was more important to her, she needed the new furnace, she needed the new hot water heater, and she had a lot of rehab. So she saw it as a win-win, is to be able to get, $25,000, $30,000 worth of rehab completed on her home as a grant, and also have a much lower payment. Legal aid has been critical. That's another referral source to us. Unfortunately, the legal aid here lost funding that addressed senior and housing issues, but they were a strong partner for a long time. And it is critical, because one of the questions we get asked a lot in all of these situations is this predatory? Are you stepping in when people are very vulnerable situation, backs against the wall, and now you're taking equity in the future? And so to be able to say that they have legal representation, if not through the whole process, at the time they're sitting down and before they sign any documents with the land trust. But having the legal aid representation is very critical. And so we are missing that a lot right now, but we do have a very strong group of attorneys. And the legal aid attorney we had, I think it said, kind of summed it up best with a homeowner, is that there are other solutions in Minnesota, and I would assume in some of your communities, that help disabled seniors be able to deal with tax delinquency. What the legal aid attorney shared with this particular homeowner was, we can find another solution for the financial. What we can't do is we can't find a solution that's going to stabilize your physical structure of your house. Get rid of the squirrels running through the attic, get rid of the mice coming through the doors, those type of things. And I like what she said. She's like, this kind of solution is a comprehensive solution. It's not just the financial, it's not just the housing, it's the combination, and it's in partnership with the land trust. I put property insurance agents up there because there's often no insurance on homes when we start to create the relationship with the homeowner. And they're often not the most insurable homes because of the deferred maintenance. And so to have some long-standing insurance agents that trust that you're going to go in and do the rehab that you say you're going to do and give you the time to do that and can talk to their underwriters to do it has also been a very critical piece. And then family members. I also put that up there because sometimes we're also dealing with literacy issues. And we do have a couple of homeowners that are essentially, they're functionally literate, but have very low reading skills. And so just to be able to have that communication and make sure they're understanding the documents is critical as well. And we also have, we have a broad range in the homeowner assisted programs. And so just making sure that if there's a family member, they're comfortable in what's happening, that they understand what's going to happen to the home, they understand the inheritability factor with the land trust, the ground lease, all of those pieces. So if there's a family member in play, you want to make sure that you're also including them to whatever degree the homeowner wants you to include them. Okay, anything else on tax forfeiture, mortgage foreclosure?
Stacy, I have a question just about home help. If you've had any experience with folks that have applied for home help?
I'm smiling because our resident expert is right here. She's, I'll hear she's like, if this home help doesn't, yeah. So I've heard a lot about home help. Yes.
So we had, a lot of people coming out of foreclosure. I think I have applied about 10 homeowners to home help because they did not come to us for any resources. So I took the liberty to reach out to the homeowner, tell them about the program, ask them if they knew about the program, and fill out the application for them, put my name as an application contact person. So then we know that the homeowner understands what's going on and how I can continue to assist them through their progress. So yes, we have had a lot of homeowners who are aware of the home help program.
Are they paying your land trust fees?
They are.
They won't pay ours.
Okay.
They will not pay our land trust fees.
Okay, so we have not come across that problem yet, but we haven't seen any funds come through, but there is a lot of documentation that has shown us progress that there's going to be fees paid.
So you haven't got any checks?
No, we haven't got any checks.
We're optimistic
Yeah.
because it keeps going through the process. And I think for the individuals that are escrowing with us, they escrow for lease fee, insurance, and taxes. So from a home health perspective, they may be just looking at that escrow payment because we're not necessarily calling out, and not intentionally, but just the fact that they ask us for the past due escrow, and they're seeing it as an escrow payment versus necessarily a line item payment for those different things. I don't know that we've had any homeowners that are just specifically behind on lease fees, because that's a pretty small number for us, that have tried to gain home help. It's more our escrowed clients that we've been trying to get through home help.
Well, so our client has a mortgage.
Okay.
So she's past due on her mortgage, which they escrow. She's way past due on her escrow because she hasn't made payments forever. And then we included our past due land trust fees. And they made, and we referred her to NeighborWorks just because I started with her and applied because St. Paul has a program, but it's not sustainable for her for the long term. So she worked with NeighborWorks through Home Help, and they will not allow the payment to even be processed with the land trust fees in there.
Wow.
They're telling us it's not an eligible expense.
And so for, yeah, I have a comment on that, but for people that don't know, Home Help MN is a program developed through COVID relief money that the state of Minnesota has decided to divvy out via an application process. I've had, so Home Help originally, they wouldn't, you know, like you had to only have missed payments since January 21st of 2020, and they wouldn't do anything further. And I had a few applicants apply, I mean, who have been in arrears for 20 years on their land lease fees, and they added them to their application, and then they denied the whole application. But now, as of August, like 18th, they opened it back up.
We applied after they opened it back up. And she does owe us, she's never paid us a land trust fee. We won't go down that path. So we asked for all of it. The housing counselor working with Home Help sent them a screenshot that says land trust fees are ineligible. And on Friday, last Friday, they said you need to take it off the application or we will deny the entire application. Land trust fees are not eligible.
So that's a whole nother session on what frontline individuals versus statute versus, between city, not so much county, but city and state, there is a lot of interpretation that happens at the front line that is not the intention, nor is it statutorily or legally outlined anywhere in those things. And so that's the frustrating part, is the decisions that are being made at the very front of the interaction. So I didn't know that, so it'll be interesting to see if they pull that out. Yeah.
I'm just trying to process through this a little bit more with the, so when you earlier used the example of like maybe someone has a house that appraised at $200,000 and maybe they were just past due on taxes. When you're working through them, how do you figure out like what their share of the equity is going to be going forward? Is it that dollar amount that you put through with the taxes and the rehab? Or I'm just thinking of like, I think we could actually use this for a lot of our very low income seniors that own their homes free and clear but just have taxes. But I'm struggling with the math in my head.
Sure, so there's two things we look at. One is, so bottom line, we want to have 20% at least of the leasehold value in our investment. So when we look at doing the ground lease and we have the appraised value and the affordable price or the homeowner base price, depending on whatever version of the ground lease you're using, is, so for example, if we have a $200,000 house and let's just say the leasehold value is $190,000, we're going to want at least $38,000 in that deal, right? That's 20% of the 190. So what we're gonna look at in the land trust, what we're gonna look at is the investment that we're bringing in just for the affordability piece, just for paying off a tax forfeiture amount or a mortgage, is it reaching this 38,000? If it is not, then part of the conversation we're having with the homeowner is to say, in order for this to work long-term and keep this home affordable long-term, we need at least 38,000 in. So are you willing to relinquish 5,000 in the equity you have right now so that we can get 38 in?
To reduce the market price, so it's below market.
So is everybody familiar with what a leasehold, what a leasehold value is? Okay. So when you have a land trust house, there's going to be a regular standard fee simple market appraisal. That's what all houses, kind of a fee simple. Fannie Mae requires a calculation that determines a leasehold value of the property. It is the capitalization of your monthly lease fee over the life of the loan. And that capitalization rate, if anybody knows where to find it, please let me know, but after 16 years, I've never been able to find it. So it is this mystery number. I joke, but yes, I've never been able to really find it. And you'll see it varies from appraiser to appraiser. And so when you're looking at mortgages or other lending, is that lenders can lend up to 80% of that leasehold value. And so if you have a fee simple market value of 200,000, and that calculation says that 10,000 of that is the capitalization of that monthly lease fee.
Over how many years?
Over the life of the loan, so it depends on the terms of the loan, but usually it's over the 30 years. So now you have a 190 in leasehold value. And it's the 20% on this leasehold value that we're wanting at least a minimum in order to achieve that affordability. It can be, if you want to be easier, you can just say 20% off of the market value, but that's what we're looking at. And so in a ground lease, you're going to have, your appraised value of 200 in this case. And let's just make the math easy. Let's just say we want 20,000 in on the market value. So then our affordable price in that is going to be 160. This is on our in an appraised formula scenario, this is what we're going to use to set the current price here and what we'll use to calculate the price in the future. Does that help?
And that's irregardless of rehab.
We don't count rehab.
Okay.
At this point in time, I'm sorry, your microphone, I'm sorry. We don't count rehab. Because we don't count it for the buyer initiated program, so we chose for the project Sustain Legacy not to count it as part of the affordable price. Yes?
So, really cool to hear about the partnership with the tax assessor and sort of that method of having a pipeline for this opportunity. But I'm just thinking about the communities in my town that are close to this point, and then somebody comes in with a great offer to buy their house. And is there anything proactive in areas that may be more vulnerable to displacement, just to educate people about a variety of options?
Mm-hmm. I think it's tough. Because most of ours have come by word of mouth, and we did. I think the partnership with the county has been critical, especially in the tax forfeiture, because there are people watching those notices day in and day out. And we've lost a couple homes to investors that have stepped in, and we're very candid. We've had some estate situations where there was one house that was valued at $400,000, and I was like, we can't step in, and I back into the numbers, and I'm like, this is what we can offer you, but if you want to sell it outright, you're going to walk away with $200,000 more than what we can offer you. And it's really up to them to decide whether or not they want to go down that path. And that's where I think in this particular scenario, it's people who want to stay in their home. They are facing potential homelessness, if not this option, or couch surfing. And to be, I don't want to be couch surfing when I'm 60 plus, and that's not that far away. And so I think just thinking about where do I want to be and where do I want to stay. And I think if it's individuals who are, I could potentially sell or I could potentially stay, you're more likely to lose some of that. But, we've talked with neighborhood groups, so they're aware of it. We've talked with local organizations, lenders, funders, the tax folks, the city, like everyone's aware, homebuyer counselors, so if you have somebody going in for a mortgage foreclosure and there's not really another option, they're aware of this particular avenue for people. So I think it's just potentially letting your partners know. And then as soon as, 1 or 2 people are assisted, then you'll start to have others. And we present it in all of our orientations as well, so buyers who are coming through may also be aware, or applicants that are coming through may be aware of the program and may know someone that could be assisted with that. But I think just getting the word out. I don't know that we've never fully marketed this one because for a while we didn't have funding for it for a couple of years, which kind of dried up the pipeline, but I think we're going to start seeing more of those come through. Okay. Good? Right. Let's hop into the Freddie Mac, and I talk about going down a rabbit hole. I just want to make you aware of this one because it is not a broad program, so please don't run out of here and go, hey, we can help Freddie Mac homeowners. That is not the case. Right now it is a pilot in 4 cities. It was developed in partnership with Grounded Solutions Network, and the 4 cities are Atlanta, Houston, Minneapolis, and Chicago. And the focus is really homeowners who are rolling off of forbearance. So coming out of COVID and the 20 months of forbearance, one of the concerns by Freddie Mac was homeowners who are now going to be faced with a payment that's just not affordable, with rolling in all the arrears and interest and all of those type of things. So they wanted to find a potential solution to help the homeowners maybe get into a more affordable monthly payment. And this still follows kind of your usual modification process. So it isn't just open to all homeowners. Freddie Mac kind of did a framework of who could be eligible for the pilot, and even then the numbers are very small. But really looking at individuals who either failed the trial payment period of the modification or couldn't qualify for the modification to begin with. And now they're referring them to partner counseling agencies in these cities to say, there's this shared equity conversion option for you. And walking them through, there's a spreadsheet that shows the side-by-side that takes into account some of the what-ifs based on the different organizations' resale formulas. And if a homeowner is interested, they can then go to the land trust, and the land trust will do their income qualification, do their education process, determine how much affordability assistance they have to invest in that particular property, and then it goes back to the servicer to say, okay, we've got $60,000 for this household, that's going to get in a payment that's within all these parameters that we've established, and so servicer Freddie Mac, are you okay with this new plan? They say yes, and then it goes to closing, and the land is quitclaimed to the land trust. So again, this is another situation where homeowners can stay in their home, but hopefully in a more affordable, but they are still going to have a mortgage payment. The first scenario or program, in the majority of cases, they are not going to have a mortgage payment. They are just going to be escrowing for property taxes and lease fee. So this is still going to be, if say they owe $250,000, the land trust is bringing $50,000, they're going to get a loan modification for $200,000 based on Freddie Mac's parameters for a loan modification, which is a new 40-year loan at whatever the interest rate was at the time. And so they'll still have that mortgage payment, but it'll be lower because of the land trust investment. But the home will be part of the land trust, and it'll be subject to the same resale restrictions, going to an income qualified household, and the resale formula applies. Okay. You will find that I just start talking and I ignore the slides. So Mary, would you just mind opening that side door, just because it feels like it's getting a little stuffy in here, just to get a little airflow. Questions on this one? This took about 18 months to get to this point. Freddie Mac is not bringing any affordability investment, nor are they willing to discount anything on their loans.
So no rate adjustment even?
No rate adjustment, no nothing. Yeah, that's, like I said, down in a whole nother rabbit hole. They expected the land trust to come with the affordability investment, which most of the land trusts are. We have not had any referrals to date, so I can't tell you directly how it's working. And also, I think there's been 2 or 3 in Houston and maybe a couple in Atlanta, so we're still trying to see what the frequency and the interest is of the shared equity conversion. But just to know it's out there and it's brewing. One of the things that Grounded Solutions is really pushing for is to loosen up some of those parameters and really allowing the land trust to figure out if they can step in and at what level they can step in. Because what Freddie Mac was, well, we got to make sure everybody gets the same amount of affordability. Well, that doesn't necessarily apply for all the same households. And we need to make sure if you're going to do rehab, we're like, no, you're not even coming with anything. So please don't tell us how to manage our public funding, and please don't tell us whether or not we can do rehab. Because, and we get this question, it's like, well, you should only, every house should get $25,000. It's like, the world doesn't work that way. We have homeowners who have children under 6, we can leverage lead dollars. We can get additional brownfield dollars for lead and asbestos. Let's rehab the homes to the greatest extent we can possibly, and if that's $50,000 for one, and someone buys a 2012 or 2018 new construction home, it's not going to need the same as a 1950s house that is covered in lead paint. So let's be real about what the situations are in our community, and let's leverage our funds as best possible. So we got the rehab thing set aside with Freddie Mac, but they're kind of wanting this consistency, and I don't know, we'll see what happens, but it's, like in Minneapolis, it was an estimated market value of no more than $300,000 because we didn't have more than $60,000 to put into a home. And so we had to just look at all of those things. And then the last one I wanted to touch on was the seller leverage program. And this is one where it's existing homeowners or community partners that we're working with. And we have seen an increasing interest in existing homeowners wanting their homes to become long-term affordable or somehow affordable. I think it is attributed somewhat to what has transpired in the last couple of years, in particular in Minneapolis. I think it's the number of homeless encampments we are seeing around our cities. But for us, I think it's almost weekly. We are getting an inquiry from an existing private homeowner who wants to see if their home can become part of the land trust. We also have done we've done one so far with a community partner that's divesting some of their single-family homes out of their portfolio and wanted to see if we could make this go from a rental single-family home to a long-term affordable home. And what we essentially start the conversation out with, in particular the private homeowner, is that we want at least a 20% discount off of the market price. And that can be pretty substantial in most cases. But that starts the conversation. And what we're looking at is essentially that 20% is going to create some base affordability in the house. So if we have someone who has a home worth, let's say $300,000, we may not have a buyer who can qualify for $300,000, but they may agree to sell it to us for $240,000 or to potentially a buyer for $240,000, without us having to bring the affordability assistance, right? So instead of us having to spend our funds, they're basically discounting the price and creating some initial affordability. One of the things we've learned is that sometimes that's not always enough. And so we may have to come with some additional affordability, but it may be $30,000 instead of $90,000. So we can stretch our funds longer. We also have some scenarios where we may step in and buy it and we need to do some rehab because of just the condition of the home and we don't have enough rehab in the home buyer initiated program to do it, but we're asking for that discount. And we have 3 homes right now that we've done through the seller leverage just in the last couple months. One, $110,000 off the market price, and that was the homeowner's decision. That was more than 20%. But she reached out about a year before she was ready to sell and said, I'm working to figure out how much I need to buy my next house. And once I have that figured out, then I want to talk with you all about how much I can sell this to you for. And so we had to bring a little bit of extra affordability just because we weren't quite there, but it worked out really well. And just recently too, it was like about $100,000 that was off a home that had belonged to the family's son who had passed away, and they just had no need for the extra house and wanted to make sure it became affordable. And then one of our community partners didn't have a whole lot of debt on one of the houses, and so we've stepped in and bought that, a little over $100,000. All of those allow us to do the work and stretch the funds as far as we can. But it has been remarkable at the number of inquiries that are coming in asking how we can do the seller leveraged. One of the things we've learned about this one is the tax implications. So there are some things that it's helpful to understand. There's a form that needs to be signed by the appraiser that will help the seller get their appreciation over the 5 years. So there's just some things you want to be mindful of when you think about doing this one, because I talked to Jeff Washburn. He had to dive into this pretty deeply for the first one that we did, but now we kind of have a process for how to make it work.
And this is for people specifically selling, and then on the close, the land goes in the CLT.
Yes, so they will either sell it directly to a land trust buyer if we have someone in the pipeline who can qualify for that reduced amount, or we're stepping in and buying it and then selling it to a land trust buyer. So it will be land owned by the land trust, subject to the resale restrictions in the future. Okay. Yes, Chad?
We were approached by the city of Roseville for a similar program, and the city actually sent out a letter to all households in houses that were valued at less than $250 assessed value. There are no houses in Roseville assessed.
So that's a short list, a short mailing list.
Well, appraising for under 250, there were 800 assessed for under 250, which was pretty remarkable. And the flow of calls has been nonstop. People are very interested in not contributing to the speculative nature of the housing market.
And Chad, you're rehabbing one of those houses right 2 blocks from my house. I drive by it every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about marketing this at all?
We have.
Okay.
I think we just kind of got our stuff together to really understand how this works. The first transaction was just in May, and we just did, and both of those had been a year in conversation with the existing homeowner, but I think now we do have some initial information on our website that says, here's a few different ways that if you want your home to become part of the land trust, this is one of them, basically the discounted price. We also have a couple of existing homeowners who have created their wills to say that we have the right of first refusal to step in and buy the home, should it be sold and not go to a family member. And I think one that was really creative, which I thought was interesting, was, if memory serves me correct, the woman was looking to eventually have to transition into like a condo or something as she aged. And so she's got a document drafted that says, should she have to do that, that the land trust has right of first refusal. So if, for some reason she has to go into a nursing home, isn't cognitive to make that decision, she has it in writing that we can step in and buy her single family home as the right of first refusal. So there's a lot, that's where you get back to this creativity piece with your organization and the strategy is, I can't tell you the number of times I'm like, I have absolutely no clue how we're going to do this. But when you're walking in partnership with individuals and families who are trying to solve for their own and yet still have an interest in this long-term affordability or wanting, as you said, not to contribute to the speculation, then you can figure it out. I mean, one of the conversations we get asked a lot is, I don't have a mortgage to pay off, but I have $100,000 worth of deferred maintenance. Can I look at doing one of the homeownership assisted programs where you'll count the rehab as the affordability investment? And we have said yes. We just haven't done one of those yet. You have a question, Emily?
My question was in relation to that, as far as the marketing goes. I would love if we were getting calls from people saying, can we sell you our house? And that is just not the case. And we've been trying to do more building of awareness, like, we'll buy your house, here are the advantages of selling to a CLT. So maybe this is more of a question for the room. Are there any marketing strategies anyone has used, or even are there other benefits related to selling your house to a CLT that we can leverage.
And are you in Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that much matters, but just I always double check because sometimes laws and stuff are different. I think understanding the tax benefit to the seller is a very important one in the fact that they can take depreciation over, I think it's of the donated amount over 5 years. And that's where this form comes into play. So there is some benefit there from not getting hit 100% with any kind of capital gains or those type of things. I really think it's wow.
She told me. I was ready.
Seriously, bro.
I was ready.
Patrice along. Sorry, little interaction up here. And if you see mosquito on me, take me out.
Yeah.
I'd like it, yeah.
I'd rather, kill the mosquitoes than you get West Nile.
I don't even have to have West Nile, like those things just welt, so if all of a sudden you see me also I'm like, the mosquito got me. Yeah, so I think, part of it, it really, I'm seeing more and more.
I won't hit you anymore.
That was just a free one, that was not
I hit it.
But it didn't die?
It didn't die.
I think part of it that we're seeing is really more what Chad alluded to is, I think housing and affordable housing is in front of people's faces like it was never before, with the homelessness, the social justice, the racial justice, the economic justice, all the things that we have been front and center for the last 2 years, especially in Minneapolis and St. Paul. So I think that's a huge as well. So the houses aren't here yet, but they will eventually. Even one of the Project Sustain Legacy homeowners has no heirs. And so part of our conversation was, will you sign the death, transfer upon death deed, and that's in place. So I guess none of us are getting out of this one, that when that happens, it will come as part of the land trust. And I suspect we could see more of that grow, just as people are thinking about what do I want to do with my home in the future.
So back to the Sustain Legacy piece and the family members. So I know that in our conversations, there's a lot of concern that really the people who are going to be the most potentially challenge it is the family members who feel like they might be being cheated out of a certain amount of inheritance, or that they're being taking advantage of a family member. Mm-hmm. Have you experienced that?
We haven't. We've had some skeptics, but once we sit down and have the conversation with them and we lay it out, so one I can think of, it was a mother-daughter who shared the home. Mother has some cognitive impairment, and mother died. And they were both on the mortgage, small mortgage, but there was only disability coming into the home at about $800 a month. Total combined of the 2 small mortgages on the property was about $700 going out the door. So how do you pay for anything else, right? And it was another client from another side of what the land trust does, and brought in, the daughter has come in. She came in very guarded. What are you all trying to do? You're trying to take my mom's house, all of those things. And a lot of conversation, and one of the things I do is I have a spreadsheet that shows what the value of the house is, what the equity is now, what it'll look like, quote-unquote scenarios in 10 years. If they go to sell, estimate, sample, written all over it, but they begin to see that we're not taking necessarily anything from the existing equity, and it's really on the change in the market value in the future. And so I think once you have that conversation and they begin to see the numbers and that, mom's gonna go from $700 a month monthly payment to $325, and they begin to see that mom can sustain the house and mom can live a little differently than she's been doing, you begin to see the benefit, or the benefit for both parties, right? And that long-term affordability and the rehab on top of it. So we haven't really had a family member that any of our homeowners liked and cared about have any issues with them becoming part of the land trust.
Thank you.
I was just back on the marketing question. I think one of the things that's resonated with the people we've worked with in Roseville is that we're a very patient and cooperative buyer. Mm-hmm. And then we've bought 5 so far, and they have few of them have been elderly folks. So they don't want to deal with the stress of selling a house on a crazy ass market that it has been. And then when we go, we run a restore. So, they're downsizing. They're like, oh, I got all this furniture. I'm like, no problem, just leave it here. We'll take the furniture. Oh, I got all this junk. No worries. It's $300 for us to call got junk, and you don't have to worry about it. And we'll do it whenever you're ready. So just the ease of the process, I think, is also resonating.
And that's actually, Chad, that's a great segue, because I think, what? Okay, this is my, pay attention, you're running out of time. So just some of the challenges, it's not quite the slide I was going to, but some of the challenges that we find is just education. As we're having this conversation and the questions that are popping up into your minds are very similar to what comes into homeowners' mind, or are you taking my equity? I'm not gonna have anything left. Are you equity stripping? It's all of those, and that's where both our education process around the model and the strategy, as well as the attorney, becomes critically important in this process. Funding, that's always up there, right, in everything that we do. Time, what Chad had mentioned, is patience. This, you'll see in the next slide, one of the lessons learned is that this process moves at the speed of trust. I saw that comment somewhere, and that is so, so true. There have been situations that have taken 1.5 to 2 years for us to build the relationship and the trust with the homeowner. And not only to get the home into the land trust, but I kid you not, I'm on year 3.5 or 4 on rehab on one of the houses. Just simply because of the challenge of change for that particular homeowner. It requires a great deal of patience. And so I think just knowing that this isn't going to happen overnight, that somebody's going to call you and say, I need to stay in my home, or I want your assistance. And we've had this conversation both with regulatory services at the city, as well as our funders, to say, are you on board that if we bring this home into the land trust and we're using your funding, you can't expect us to have all the rehab done in a year's time or 6 months' time. And we had a particular homeowner who suffers from bipolar schizophrenic. And bless the city's heart, every time the city didn't like, and granted, in fairness to the city, he's been a challenge with his personal projects and house projects. And so they'd send him a letter, and it'd be like, you need to get your house numbers up in 30 days or else we're gonna assess your taxes, which of course is what contributed to the whole situation to begin with. And so that would inflame him, and then it's a call, and finally, which is a whole other story of why I have such a great relationship with the regulatory services at the city of Minneapolis. But I just, I called the person that I usually call in situations and said, can we meet with your staff? I need you to understand that if it's a project sustained legacy homeowner, we may not be able to do the roof like you want us to do the roof, because we can only move as fast as the homeowner is comfortable. This is not a situation where the pond comes part of the land trust and we're charging in and doing whatever we want for rehab. We have to work with the homeowner, and that depends on where they're at and what is going on. And so it actually has worked out really nicely, because they will call us if there's an issue in most cases. Sometimes we get a new inspector and they don't call us. But we've been able to mitigate some of those scenarios and just say, just let us know and we'll get it figured out. But we're just asking for your patience. Organizational capacity, as you might expect, time and funding, this takes time and it takes capacity to do. The home values, that's been a challenge as of late, just making sure we have that 20% in. And sometimes when you only have $12,000 worth of taxes, we're not getting that $40,000 we need. So that creates some of those harder conversations around existing equity. And then I talked about the limits that Freddie Mac has, which has limited access to existing homeowners. The lessons learned, this is a very relationship intensive. So if you are not a people person, this probably isn't something you want to take a look at, because it is very, very relationship intensive. Disability considerations is very important. You really need to understand the whole person, not just what their financial situation is on paper, because that's going to impact how you have communication, how you connect, We have a homeowner, Shang's been trying to help that it's just off and on. Phone is sometimes on, phone is sometimes off. It's not easy to mail things because there is a level of illiteracy there, so we can't be sure that what we are sending in writing is understood. So Shang is stopping by and saying, hey, I need you to sign off on this. We explain everything, trying to get the home help. It's those type of things. So again, it's this borderline, but it's helping the organization while also helping the homeowner. But it is, you need to understand the whole situation. Patient funding source, talked about that, strong partnerships. I touched early on sustainability in that we've learned over time that sometimes the money isn't always there on our homeowner. What's important to us is our homeowners are contributing something, right? They haven't just stopped paying. It's just us trying to be reasonable in that we're not going to take 90% of your monthly income if that just doesn't work. The one benefit we have is that Minneapolis started assessing land trust homes on the land trust price instead of the full market price. And for some of the homeowners that we've assisted, they're in high market areas, so that's going to be a substantial change in their monthly payments, and very helpful. And then I talk about this all the time, rehab is essential. The financial solution is not the whole solution. It has to be the two together in these homeowner assisted program situations. And with that, I'd like to know, what opportunities do you all see in your communities? And what do you think is needed to help you capitalize on those? And the room grows. Yes.
A real basic, because I'm not nowhere near the level you all are at. If we're just starting in this and we need more assistance in understanding and development, do you have consultants that your companies have worked with, or do you just bring in somebody that jumped right in and learned everything they could do? And
are you talking about homeowner assisted programs in particular, or land trust?
I'm going real basic, just community land trust.
So when we first started, we did have Michael Brown with Burlington and Associates that consulted on the concept of that. On these particular, we just figured it out as we went, and so we do have conversations and we do some consulting ourselves on this. So I think just starting out, and I don't know how much Burlington Associates is doing consulting. I don't know if anybody else in the room.
I talked to Michael earlier this year. I think he's pretty much
they're kind of, yeah, they're retiring because they have been around for generations, John Davis and everyone.
At least Michael Brown.
Yeah, but Grounded Solutions, if you're not connected with Grounded Solutions Network, you may want to check that out because they do have technical assistance for startups. And I just don't know who, if they're using internal resources or if they're contracting with other practitioners to help in those scenarios.
Is that what Brenda Trophy is doing now?
I think in part, yeah. And I think, but I think she's under Burlington. So they brought in Deb and they brought in Brenda, I think, at one point in time, but I just don't know how prolific.
Yeah.
They're not, I'm not sure they're as prolific as David or Michael and John Davis were.
Yeah, it's Jason Webb at Grounded Solutions.
Yes, Jason Webb is the contact for
They
that.
just provided us a proposal, so if you wanted to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Mariah, I'm from Door County, and we're the ones that don't have any staff, and we've been relying on Grounded Solutions. They've got some really good trainings and classes, and some of them are coming up in October of this fall. The one that we found most, I mean, there's like an overview of CLT basics class, but the affordability and pricing class we thought was fantastic. And Julie Brunner from Opal,
yes,
on Orcas Island, their CLT teaches that. And then we actually hired her after that to help Door County figure out how to price our homes and what kind of formula we should use, and that was super helpful.
Yeah, Julie's has been consulting for a long time as well, so she's awesome.
Sorry, I didn't hijack your discussion, but I had to ask.
No, please do.
I just don't even know where to start.
That's the purpose we're here.
Yeah,
For the overall conference.
Yeah, because we floundered for like a year trying to figure out like how do we do this, like, and then so that was really sort of.
Yeah, and if you're new to pricing and you're doing developments, don't price at 78% of AMI. You want to price for 60, 65, so you have some breathing room upon resales. Just a little note. Because if you sell it at 80, it's going to be hard to sell it in the future at 80 unless the market tanks. Okay. Other,
So I feel like here we've talked about the same thing. There are older people in our community who have limited incomes. The houses are over 100 years old, and even the houses we have that Kepler owns are like over 100 years old. But we have resources to be able to handle it. But I don't know, like, and part of our question is, and I think this goes a long way of like, okay, it depends on everyone's circumstances. But even like on a deeper level, it strikes me that a lot of the challenge is people are separated in community, that like elders are isolated and they don't have community to support them, and them with their wisdom and experience to support other people. So like, I think like this strikes me as like a very practical, okay, how do we stabilize the house solution? But I guess in our heads, we were wondering, is there another way to connect them with other people, whether that's creating an ADU unit that is more like, if they can age in place better, but still get rental income from their house. We threw around a lot of crazy ideas. I won't go into all of them now, but just like the challenge of being able to do it in a way that practically works and also honors the relational.
Well, I think that's the key thing, is it is all rooted in relationship. Everything we do is rooted in relationship. And if that's not something you're focused on as an organization, I encourage you to rethink your process. Because all my colleagues have heard me say it, our work begins with the first conversation. And if we don't establish a respectful interaction at that point in time, we can forget about the long-term relationship. And if you don't have that long-term relationship at some level, I'm not saying that all of our homeowners are best friends. It was very different when they were 25 homeowners and we knew their kids and we knew everybody, but now, you know, there's homeowners that I don't really know because I didn't work with them. And as some of us get far removed, but it's trusting in the fact that our homeowners and our other staff are building those relationships. And that comes with something that Chang said, is that the 10 or so that we're trying to help with home help haven't reached out to us. But if we have those relationships in place and you have someone who's focused on that, I mean, we're very fortunate because we do have a full-time person who can build those relationships. People are going to reach out. So when you talk about creating those connections, it could just be that we've built the trust and we're not the ones who necessarily can connect them to home help, but we can get that information out to them to say, you have this resource. Or did you know that your neighborhood is doing this? Or you call and say, well, I need a tree removed. I can't afford $8,000. So how do well, here's, a reasonable tree removal. Is it a boulevard? We can begin to direct them, and that creates those networks and ultimately, hopefully. But if you don't have that relationship, they're not even going to start that conversation with you. And I think when you look at other solutions, I heard you say like an ADU and those type of things, you also have to think of the financial piece and how many seniors actually have in our community $150,000 to create an ADU. Very few. But I think, where do you step in? Where do you have those? And if you can at least be a resource, you've shored up the home, you've shored up the individual financially, and now hopefully you have that relationship that they will reach out and begin to ask you, and how do you create those other connections? And I think that just comes over time, right? People are going to ebb and flow. They're going to ebb and flow in their connections with you. And if you can just be there and answer the questions and have the resources, that is what fosters the relationship, and you're creating networks that you may not even be aware of, just simply because you're answering the phone, you're answering the email, you're giving them the resources. It's not up to us to solve everything, and we were just talking about this at staff meeting, and I really, like Shang's reverted to, okay, so what would you like the land trust to do? Because we get all sorts of inquiries, right? And we tend to go into that solution mode because that's who we are. And I just really appreciate that, because I don't know that we can solve the issue of the dog pooping on your driveway on a daily basis. That's not really something, but do you need the number to animal control? So help us understand how we can help you in that situation instead of automatically going into, it's ours to solve because you're our homeowner. And again, I think that creates a partnership versus a reliance on us. Other opportunities that you see in your city? Do you think this is an opportunity? their communities.
I think the main partnership that's needed is even the funding source, so that's where my mind is. Where does the money even begin to come from, as a new CLT?
Yes, and I will tell you, we have unsuccessfully, so we originally did this under the HIP program. Our philosophy was the HIP program, the buyer initiated program, the home buyer initiated program was all about choice. And in our minds, homeowners were just choosing to stay in the home that they already had. That worked for about the first 6 years. And then, ironically, one of our major funders told us to cease and desist using their funds for this program, and we've been unsuccessful in getting them to fund it. But the county stepped up, as has the city, in a big way to help. So those of you who are in the Minneapolis area, just know we do have funding to be able to assist homeowners in the Project Sustain Legacy. But it was very interesting because the same funder who told us to cease and desist was the very same funder who referred the first household to us to solve the situation.
I'm just kind of thinking about, areas where there's catalytic development either driven by the city or by a private developer, and potentially working into the negotiated agreement that they either have to contribute funds to a program like this to prevent displacement, or at a minimum support marketing efforts in the community.
So we're going to touch on a little variation of that. Just a plug for Trent and I's presentation tomorrow afternoon. Trent's like, shh. There's one on developer partnerships. And so we're going to touch a little bit on can you leverage a development that's potentially going to facilitate displacement and gentrification. Other questions? We're getting near time, and it's that time of the day as well. So, other questions, comments, concerns? Yes?
We do the Hennepin County suburbs, and ours is done a little different. The city, we do those programs where we got home buyers coming to us. The cities market it for us. They're our partner in it, and they also help fund it.
With existing homeowners?
With existing, yeah. We've got home buyers that come to us. We've got one family, we're buying their house. They're moving out of the country. Unfortunately, I don't know that we get 25% because of the way every city develops differently, so we don't get the 20% down. But they have a ceiling, and when we're talking, I don't know if you guys know where Edina is, some of you aren't from around here. Edina does it, and they have a max that we can purchase a home for. So these people that contact the city first, the city sends them to us.
And we've had some referrals from the city as well.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's leveraging your existing partnerships to have those conversations. But it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years ago that we really have a well-funded for right now. I mean, that will go quickly, but it was kind of piecemealing it together beforehand.
When you're looking at the rehab, especially if you got an elderly person in there, are you doing kind of age-in-place improvements?
We can where it's possible to do those, and we're actually faced with that situation now. It's a combination of health issues and aging in place. And so we're really trying to think through trying to get a bathroom. So when I entered the conversation, so this is also one thing to be aware of, is when we started the conversation, it was, I just need a bathroom on the first floor, I can handle everything else. Well, now that we have the house in the land trust, it's like, I really need a bedroom on the first floor. It's a 1950s bungalow. I don't know where, unless you want your dining room to become the bedroom. And so we're trying to figure out and solve, and yet still being very frank about, very upfront, not something we normally do. We understand it's a different situation with the medical issue. We're going to try to solve if we can from a budget perspective. We think we've solved for the bathroom, and now we're trying to get numbers to see if we can solve for like the porch turning into a conditioned space that could be a bedroom on the first floor. We don't do a lot of that in the buyer initiated program, but 66% of the households we've helped through Project Sustain Legacy are seniors. So we are also thinking about, how do we accommodate some of that? As well as we've got some disabilities and other health issues in some of our buyer initiated. So where we can, we're trying to modify those as well. And or connect them to the Hennepin County program. So we have had some scenarios where our Hennepin County has, they'll build ramps and a few other things. And so we have connected them, and we've had ramps built on some of the land trust homes. And and those things. But if you know of a resource, Chad, like,
Well,
like,
our Age Well at Home program, we just spun off.
Oh,
So
okay.
you should connect directly with.
Okay, awesome. With
Pat.
Pat, okay.
I can send you this.
No, that'd be awesome, because we always try to leverage, I'd like to leverage as much as possible. All right. If there's no other questions, thank you very much for your attention this afternoon. And just have you know, hot off the press, I haven't carried these for 3.5 years, but I have business cards. If anybody wants one. Thank you very much. You guys enjoy the reception. Shane and I are